Let's start our story with a setting at a mountain peak that rises above the southern plains. On that mountain, Lloyd has finally obtained Top. Now that he has obtained Top, one of the legendary materials of the Truth Jewel, he receives a bonus RP worth 2,200. With one spell cast by the Great Elder Dragon Tyrannus, that material was instantly teleported to the Merman Kingdom, straight into the lair where the other two materials were. Tyrannus, Lloyd, and Javier were instantly teleported to that area. With that, Lloyd obtained Hauraki and Takapuna. Having obtained Hauraki, one of the legendary core materials, Lloyd receives 2,400 RP and another bonus of 2,600 RP for obtaining Takapuna. Lloyd now has a total of 8,955 RP. Tyrannus asks Lloyd if he probably needs to send this to the Merman Kingdom like he did with Top. Lloyd tells him that it's fine now. He bows down and tells Tyrannus that he already owes a great debt to him for all the help he has provided so far. Tyrannus replies that it wasn't that difficult for him. Lloyd looks at him seriously and tells him that he can't inconvenience Tyrannus any further, and he hopes that Tyrannus will just observe from now on. Tyrannus looks worried and asks Lloyd if he will be fine because he will need Verkas's help if he wants to get Kier Aura, and it won't be easy to get the Dragon King to move. Lloyd starts to get serious and assures Tyrannus that he is an expert. This crazy guy, with his level 999 face that looks like it could take the position of the Demon King, tells Tyrannus that he's the best when it comes to problems like that. Tyrannus starts to get scared and shakes at the sight of that ugly face, agreeing with what Lloyd said. But Tyrannus still believes in him, seeing how Lloyd was able to get him to move too. He believes that Lloyd might really be able to do it. He can only think that Lloyd is such a fearsome human. Then Lloyd calls his loyal dog, which is actually a Calamity-class bone dragon named Yang Yang. Yang Yang is near the area, so he flies towards his master. Yang Yang lands the place excitedly to meet his father. Tyrannus is shocked to see that Lloyd commands a bone dragon and really thinks that Lloyd is a strange person because this human has the power to destroy the world in an instant if he really wanted to. Yet despite that, Lloyd is collecting construction materials and has no ambition to conquer the world. Before Lloyd completely leaves the area, he is called by the Great Elder Dragon, who warns him that he must not underestimate the restoration phenomenon of faith because not even his son Verkas can do anything about that great power. Then Tyrannus smiles and tells Lloyd that he believes Lloyd will be able to complete the duties that fall upon him. Lloyd can only smile at the trust of the Great Dragon. These two crazy guys are now riding the bone dragon towards the estate. Javier tells Lloyd that he wonders if Verkas will perform dimensional teleportation for them too, because Javier thinks he would be too lazy to do that. Lloyd smirks and assures Javier that he has his own plans, saying that lazy bastards create their own weaknesses for people to exploit, then starts laughing. Javier is silent for a second, thinking if he should ask that question. Javier asks Lloyd if Seoul is his hometown. Lloyd is silent for a moment, looking at Javier. Lloyd asks him why he thinks that. Javier tells Lloyd that it's because he saw his face change when Seoul was mentioned. Lloyd becomes silent, perhaps thinking of something related to his past life. He smiles and says that right now, his hometown is the Frontera estate. Lloyd says that he misses that place and tells Javier that he wonders if everyone's doing fine. Then Yang Yang starts to fly faster toward the estate. In the dark night at Frontera County, a random guy appears a few kilometers away from the place. Actually, there are a lot of them, looking like soldiers in their ragtag armor and wielding long battle axes. They start scouting and peeking at the estate. Then a man who seems to be their leader appears, his eyes looking like those of a villain. He tells his men that this is the village known to possess many treasures and riches. His loyal knight tells the leader that here, he is just a normal man named Edis, the former third prince of Arios in the far southern principality, who failed in his rebellion and has now become the leader of the bandits. His knight tells him that if he takes over this village, he will be able to build the new country he has always dreamed of. The blood of this crazy prince starts to pump, and he smiles like a villain. He told his comrades that they needed to go and raze the village to the ground, and then cut off the head of the local lord. He ordered his first squad to burn down all the houses. The bandits started going wild, carrying torches and swords while shouting. But what they encountered were large, muscular orcs flashing rock and roll signs. The bandits wanted to take a piss as they ran for their lives, cursing because they couldn't believe there were orcs, many orcs, not just one. They shouted retreat out of fear. As soon as the soldiers reported back, Edis, their leader, couldn't believe there were orcs. He started to question why there would be orcs in a countryside village. One of the soldiers from the squad, who was his loyal knight, was still panting, saying that he had no idea. He saw those orcs walking around and chatting like it was something normal. Edie said it didn't matter anymore and then ordered the second squad to go through the northern forest and invade the local lord's mansion. But what greeted the second squad was another race, elves who were grilling pork belly while watching them. The soldiers were speechless. Why would elves be in that place, cooking no less? Moira, the leader of the elves, looked at one of the soldiers and asked him why he stepped on that flower, since elves are nature-loving creatures. The next thing that happened was a large volley of arrows being shot at them. One of the soldiers appeared, still in shock, with many arrows sticking out of his body. They were just lucky that these were not deadly arrows, or else they would have become porcupines. When the soldier reported what happened, Edis couldn't believe it and asked why on earth elves were grilling meat in the village's forest. The soldier, who was not in his right mind, said that he didn't know, but the meat looked delicious. This made Edis, the former third prince and now the leader of the bandits, angry. He told his men that they couldn't go back after coming this far. He shouted, telling everyone that they would start charging in. All the soldiers decided to launch a frontal assault on the estate. Greg, who was drawing something, told the orc who was courting his sister that he must speak formally or just keep quiet. The orc replied that speaking human formal speech was too tough, but Greg said he didn't see any issues when this orc was talking to Emily. Greg asked what it was about. The orc said it was about a bandit invasion, but Greg wasn't alarmed by it. He said it was an awesome opportunity because it was time to test what he was drawing. It was actually a freaking missile in a medieval era. It flew at a fast rate, but the missile only passed by Edis and his crew, who had no idea what it was. The next thing that happened was when the missile hit the ground, creating a massive explosion. Seeing that bomb explode, the bandits were terrified and started shouting while running. On the other hand, Greg was annoyed because the missile missed the target. Wells said it was better than the previous one, though, and told Greg that he would keep helping him create them. The bandits were completely beaten, and many of the soldiers were lying on the ground. But Edis shouted that he, the Prince of the Abyss, would not retreat, even in the face of this estate where demons lived. His knight said that he would aid this idiotic prince until the end. Then Wells started calling Solitas a clumsy dragon and told him to send those bandits back home. Greg was shocked because he had no idea that Solitas was a dragon. Solistas asks Wells why he should do that. Wells told him that they need to do it so they can start their lesson quickly. With that, Solistas decided to transform into his dragon form and released his fire breath, causing Edis and his loyal knights to run for their lives while crying. In the end, the villagers saw Edis walking with a stick like a poor beggar, his body smoking from the dragon's fire. He was shaking and shivering while panting. He declared that he, the Prince of the Abyss, would grow his forces one day and destroy everything in this land of demons. But while he was mumbling, a large shadow of a creature appeared above the sky. It was Yong Yong, one of the threats he might face if he continued his revenge. This poor guy, who was mumbling about revenge a while ago, turned into a scared puppy. The villagers were shocked, asking why such a thing had come to their village. Writing that large bone dragon, capable of destroying a whole country in a day, was the Dark Knight or Witch, who we might call Batman, with a dark ominous aura. This guy thinks he is Batman, but he is not Batman at all. He is a scary guy with a level 99 legendary and mythical ranked ugly face named Lloyd Frontera. He had actually heard everything Edis was mumbling about. Lloyd asked him what he just said and if he had a death wish saying that, but the villagers were already used to Lloyd's S-rank ugly face. On the other hand, the Prince of the Abyss, who saw that face for the first time, received an instant killing blow just by looking at it. Edis lost consciousness instantly. In the future, bandits would call Frontera County the territory of the demon god. Lloyd jumped down, excited to go to the estate. He said it was time to open the door to Seoul, but the lazy Dragon King was still sleeping, unaware of what would happen to him if this demon appeared. It was a very warm morning as the sun rose in Frontera County. Many of the undead under Lloyd Frontera's control started walking down the hallway, carrying different kinds of musical instruments as if they were about to have a concert. They struck a pose as they prepared to start their musical concert. One undead began plucking the strings of his instrument, thinking he was Miguel from a movie entitled Coco. Another undead started plucking the harp, while another began clanging the cymbals, creating a loud noise meant to wake up the lazy Dragon King. But it had no effect since the Dragon King was sleeping so soundly, with saliva dripping from his mouth. Another undead started screeching the violin, creating an unpleasant noise. The maid assigned to care for the Dragon King could only cover her ears because of the loud noises. The Dragon King started to get annoyed, saying it was too noisy, and then his aura began burning. The next thing that happened was he looked at the undead with eyes that were about to release a laser light. The next thing that happened was that those undead turned into double-dead creatures because the laser hit them perfectly, and they were all disintegrated. Then, a man suddenly walked inside the door, and that's when the bones of one of the fallen undead fell at his feet. But this guy also started his tempo as he was about to start his concert, singing just one note. Javier prepared to cover his ears by putting mana in them. With a beautiful face and lips, the greatest singer of all time, named Lloyd Frontera, with a voice that could declare war, made the demons excited, saying he was the greatest singer in hell. One note destroyed everything, a simple singing that scared the maid in the estate for her life. Even Javier, who was covering his ears, couldn't completely protect himself from the heavenly voice of Lloyd Frontera as it penetrated deeply into his head. The Dragon King, who was almost invincible, started sweating after hearing that golden voice that could win Lloyd a dance contest. The invincible dragon felt that he had been hit by the strongest attack he had ever received in his life. Everything was a mess. The undead were scattered, the lazy dragon was shocked, and Javier was on his knees, completely defeated by that one savage attack from Lloyd. Lloyd smiled and asked the Dragon King if he had been doing well. The Dragon King was pale and sweating heavily, like he had suffered from sleep paralysis caused by Lloyd's voice. He told Lloyd that he was okay until a moment ago, until he let out that monstrous shriek of a collapsing black hole voice. Lloyd asked him if he enjoyed the morning call of the skeleton worker squad. The Dragon King replied that they were indeed pretty noisy, trying to wake him up every morning. But the Dragon King told Lloyd to wait because a thought had just crossed his mind. He realized that he had forgotten to contact his wife and went back to sleep. Realizing this, he knew he was doomed. This Dragon King might be the strongest, but he is also a simp. This made the Dragon King angry, and he looked at Lloyd, about to release a laser beam from his eyes. He told Lloyd that he hadn't contacted her because he left without doing a good job and hadn't contacted her for a month. He told Lloyd that he was going to kill him. Lloyd's face turned into an ugly mantis as he cooked up another statement to back up his villainous plot. He told the Dragon King that he did his best to wake him up consistently as promised. He reminded the Dragon King that he had said in the past that he would make sure to contact his wife, and that was the promise. Then Lloyd started laughing like a demon, saying that the Dragon King must be the one to contact her, and that's something he has to do himself because that was the agreement. The Dragon King was silent because what Lloyd said was the truth. The lazy Dragon King started to get stressed, asking what he should do now because this really looked bad. He started to question why he was so lazy. Then Lloyd suggested something that could help him escape the nagging of his wife. The Dragon King was excited, asking Lloyd if he had a way to resolve this. Lloyd started cooking up another plan. He told the Dragon King to make up a story that he was busy because he needed to defeat an ugly evil villain that came from another dimension and used all sorts of weird abilities, going around this world committing all sorts of crimes. Lloyd said that in that story, the Dragon King, who has a great sense of justice, couldn't leave the villain alone, so he tracked him for days and nights, and later, he was able to catch him. Lloyd, with his ugly face, pointed at himself, saying that he is that villain in the story. The Dragon King thought about it after hearing Lloyd's plot, then started smiling because it made sense. He was amazed and told Lloyd that it was an awesome idea and that he might even get compliments from his wife. Lloyd agreed and told the Dragon King that he could put a leash on him and drag him to the Dragon Queen. With a face that looked like a demon king, he said he would play the role of a villain perfectly for the Dragon King. Javier remained silent, watching Lloyd. He thought that this guy wouldn't just be acting as a villain because he was actually the best villain. Lloyd was just going around lying to others, which is actually the act of a villainous character. Lloyd starts moving his hands, showing that he needs something. The Dragon King looks at him and understands what the expression is referring to, so he asks Lloyd what he needs him to do this time. Lloyd bows down and thanks the Dragon King. He asks the Dragon King to help him obtain the Kier Aura, which is in Seoul. The Dragon King asks him what that Kier Aura is, but then realizes it was the material of the Truth Jewel that he sent to Seoul. Hearing this annoys Lloyd because it means the Dragon King knew the Truth Jewel was destroyed and didn't tell him. The Dragon King tells Lloyd that he did send it there, but there's no exact location. Instead, he picks something from his pocket to give Lloyd something that will help him find it. He shows him a dog and tells Lloyd that this is the Find Everything dog, and it will guide him in the direction of the item. Looking at the dog's face, Lloyd asks if dragons have no interest in appearances. This guy has the audacity to talk about appearance. His face says it all. The Dragon King says he doesn't know about other dragons, but he already has a handsome face, so he doesn't care about anything else. Then the Dragon King picks another item and says it is the magic hammer that goes anywhere, but the Dragon King is annoyed because the hammer isn't coming out. Lloyd looks at the item and says it's so lame. The Dragon King starts chanting something, saying that the hammer will go to Seoul. Lloyd thinks that since it involves dimension travel, something on the level of a gift from that old dragon should also appear. Then the hammer falls from the Dragon King's hand as he throws it, creating a squeak sound, followed by a ding sound as the dimension circle appears. Lloyd, who wants to see something magical and climactic, looks at the magical hammer with disappointment. Javier can only tap his shoulder to comfort him, saying he should be used to this by now. Lloyd starts stepping onto the magical circle and tells Javier that it's time for them to go now. The Dragon King tells him that it's a two-way magic. If he stands on the dimension travel circle in that world, he will be able to come back again. Then both Lloyd and Javier are slowly engulfed by the dimensional circle. The Dragon King asks Lloyd if Seoul is his hometown. Lloyd asks for pardon because he doesn't understand why the Dragon King asked that. The Dragon King says that his body in that world should be sleeping, and he should not go looking for it because if the two of them get close to each other, an error might occur, and both could get destroyed. That's what the Dragon King guesses. Lloyd tells the Dragon King that he understands. Then both of them are completely engulfed by the dimensional circle. The dimensional circle is actually connected to a dark alleyway in Seoul. Both Lloyd and Javier slowly rise up. They are able to completely rise up within the alleyway. Javier looks at his master, asking if this is really Kim Suho's hometown because if that guy chooses to stay there and not go back, Javier says he will bring him back even if he has to use force. But Javier notices something that alarms him. He feels something strange as he looks at his body because all his mana has disappeared. He starts to question if he cannot use it in this world. Then Javier notices that the dog, which is the guide the Dragon King gave them, starts barking. Lloyd tells Javier that they need to go now and thinks that's the way the dog is referring to. Javier can only agree with what his master says. While following Lloyd, Javier thinks that it's not a good situation because if something dangerous occurs, he has no mana to use. Then, while walking, Javier can only cover his eyes from the bright light that suddenly appears. It is from the very busy city with a lot of cars passing by. Javier starts coughing as he notices the polluted air, thinking that it feels just like when they went to hell. Lloyd tells Javier that they need to go now and get some clothes first because they will stand out too much like this. Javier tells Lloyd that he wants to let him know that his mana has completely disappeared, and if anything dangerous happens, he can't protect him. Lloyd replies that he doesn't need to worry because nothing like that will happen there. Javier's attention is caught as he notices something strange about his young master. Actually, Lloyd is sweating and breathing heavily. Maybe he is scared or thinking about something related to his hometown. Lloyd's weakness must be Seoul. The greatest manipulator of all time also has his own weak points.